Alright folks, just wanted to do a quick video talking about EDC knives and the steel that are used in these types of knives. And what really got me started thinking about it was a buddy of mine did a video this morning. He compared two different Spyderco knives, and I made some comment, and then he responded back that he was going to carry the newer knife, and it had S30V in there, and he wanted to really test that out. A lot of people talk about S30V as being like a super steel, premium steel, and it is. It's one of the newer, more modern steels. Even though I think it's been around for a while, but it's a great steel, and it's one of my favorite EDC carry steels. So anyhow, I wanted to talk about some of these premium steels and why the knives cost more money. And it's not just because they're buying better steel or they're buying premium steel or super steel, which costs more to make, so in turn the steel costs more to buy if you're a manufacturer. But also, those steels have longer edge retention because they're more wear resistant. And so because they're more wear resistant, it takes more effort to fashion a steel bar into a shaped blade. You have to grind it, and it takes longer, and then you have more wear on, if you're using a grinding stone or a belt, will wear out faster. So it's actually a little bit tougher to manufacture as well. One of the things that people say, or terms they throw around, is hardness. And they'll say, well, this is a hard steel, and S30V is hard, and ALS-8 is soft, and they both can be hardened to the same Rockwell, like 58, 59, 60. Some steels can be hardened more than other steels, but when you start to talk about the steel's ability to hold an edge, it's not just about hardness. It's also about the molecular composition of the steel itself. So some of the early steels that we had were high carbon steels, right before stainless came out, and then before the modern stainlesses. And one of the things that makes carbon steel still really popular in like camping or harder use tools, like an axe or big chopper knives and stuff like that, is that it has the ability to flex. So it's more forgiving when lateral tension or torsion is applied to the knife. It'll still chip and break, but it's less brittle and less likely to break. So if you think about like a machete, right? Like a machete can really bend and flex. They're typically made out of carbon steels, and if you made one of those out of, say, S90V, which is a more expensive steel, it would snap if you tried to apply that layer of flex or tension or lateral tension to it. The other thing is that carbon steels will tend to roll as opposed to chip, and they're easier to sharpen because of the content of the steel. Allows you to sharpen them on things like river stones, car windows, the bottoms of coffee mugs, and stuff like that. So when I talk about the molecular composition, as some of these more modern steels, they have more stuff in them than some of the earlier steels. And an example that I heard explained it really well was if you think about like Jell-O, like think about a bowl of Jell-O, and then you think about Jell-O with fruit in it. Those pieces of fruit can be considered the carbides that are in some newer steels. And those carbides add wear resistance. Now some of the powdered steels really try to reduce the size of the carbides, or at least make them all uniform inside. So a good example, and I think it's a great EDC steel, is VG10. And so VG10 has a high carbide content to it. It's a good steel because you can get it very sharp very fast, and then the carbide content of it allows you to get a more acute angle, so it's a better slicer. But for me, VG10 holds its edge for a reasonable amount of time, but then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's completely dull. And I think that's because those carbides, once they start to break loose from your edge, they start to break loose at a accelerated pace. I think it takes a while for them to start to give you edge deformation. I'm not sure if that's making any sense or not. But let's get this out of the way. One of the things I want to talk about, when you get a knife that has a more acute angle, right, it's a better slicer the steeper the angle is that you can get on your edge. And so like typically you'll see something like this around a 40-degree angle with a carbon steel like on this SE. And that's because if you took this steel based off of the way it's manufactured with the molecular composition, and you took it down to a finer edge like that, this edge would roll to one direction or another, because it doesn't have the rigidity to hold itself straight. So that's why carbon steel makes a great chopping tool for like a big wood chopper or an axe or something like that. And a lot of people will, in order to keep the edge longer, will even put like a convex edge on there where it's a little bit more rounded. Now, I'm not saying that convex edges aren't sharp, because I know somebody will be like, I got a hair-shaven sharp convex. That's true. But when you speak about the slicing ability of a knife, and it becomes a thing of draw and how much friction something that's actually slicing through something provides or experiences. So you can take these harder, that's probably not the right word, you can take these super steels and you can actually refine the edge much tighter to like a 30-degree angle. And in some cases you'll even see knives that'll have like a 27 to 25-degree angle. And that, when you start to say like that's kitchen knife sharp, that is something that will really slice quickly through any kind of material. So I'm not 100% sure that that's making a whole lot of sense. So I guess what I was going to say to my buddy who's going to be using the S30 steel versus like an 8CR or something like that is that with the S30, which is a very popular steel and one I like quite a bit, you can actually take that down to a more acute angle than even what it's factory shipped at. And that's where these super steels tend to shine, in my opinion, because from a physics standpoint, you can really get a a scary sharp edge on that. I don't know if that's making any sense or not. And anyhow, so I have just a couple of different knives out here that we can talk about, and some of the steels. We already talked a little bit about the high carbon steel. This is a I don't even know if they technically consider H1 a steel. This is a rust resistant or extraordinarily rust resistant knife, and I've never had to sharpen it. It hasn't seen a whole lot of action though. I typically take this like when I go to the pool or fishing or something like that, just because I know I'm going to be around water. We talked a little bit about VG10. This is a great steel, and it's priced right. Let me get this paper out of the way. And it doesn't add a lot of cost to a knife. This knife is S30, and it's kind of has a more obtuse angle on it. I tightened the angle up a little bit when I sharpened it, but it's still a little bit wider. I could probably get better performance from a slicing standpoint out of this if it had a more acute edge. This is an S3 or 3V, I believe. Yeah, 3V. These types of steels, when you start to talk about like a S3 or 3V or an S90 or an S110, they are so wear resistant that they're very difficult to sharpen. You have people say, hey, I can't even get this thing sharp, because once it dulls, the effort required to sharpen it, because it is so abrasive resistant, it can be a little bit of a hassle. This is one of my most used knives, and it is it actually starts to have a little bit of a convex edge on here just because it's been sharpened so many times and stropped so much. This is an 8CR13 MOV on Spyderco Tenacious. And, you know, I think that some of these, when people call them entry-level steels or budget steels or low-end steels, are adequate to meet the cutting needs of most people. When you think about how, like the settlement of America, or depending upon how you look at it, the early history of America, they didn't even have steel this good, and they were able to, you know, build guns, and they were able to kill buffalo and do all kinds of things, like chop down a huge national force. With steel that's less than what we call super steel these days. This is a cold steel Zos 8. And what I think is great about cold steels is they're starting to make a lot more knives. From 2015, they're going to have I think it's CPX. Basically a higher end steel, so it'll be exciting to see what they come out with. And then this Spyderco, I think this is a Chicago, still uses 440C. It's funny, I did a video with this Chicago in it, and people are like, that knife sucks, that steel is shit. And, you know, if you take a look at this knife, what are you really going to do with this? I mean, it's not like you're going to chop down a tree or baton through logs, or you're going to peel a cow, or you're going to prepare a large meal. this is just a nice little EDC blade for opening packages and letters and stuff like that. And I'm sorry, I think 440 is fine for that. I think it's a very adequate steel. So anyhow, I don't know if it made any sense. I just want to talk a little bit about it, and that's really it. So thanks, everybody.